just wanna talk about some books. Hey, I just wanna talk about some books. Talk about some books. Talk about some books. Hey, I just wanna talk about some books with you.
Hey everybody, I'm Joe,
And I'm JoJo, and this is Canonical Nonsense.
and we are just two Joe Schmoes reading books.
This season, we are exploring the dragon canon and the portrayal of dragons in modern fantasy. So, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about The Saint of Dragons by Jason Hightman. So just some background on why we picked this book, some background on Jason Hightman as well. We picked this book because of a listener. So thank you.
Thank you. I am Grimmican, I'm gonna guess. God, our inability to read fantasy names and our inability to read usernames is gonna collide here. But thank you, I'm a Grimmakin.
I think I'm a Grimakin because a Grimakin is a creature. It's a like a cat thing.
Oh.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I am Grimakin, and correct me if I pronounce that wrong. But thank you for suggesting this book. We really appreciate you, and I look forward to hopefully your many comments on this episode. So hope you enjoy. Some background on Jason Hightman. He is the author of this and two other books, but all of them seem to be standalones. The other two books are titled Samurai and Spirit. His bio is a little whimsical. So it says that he studied dragon hunting and alchemy at the University of Southern California, and that he does battle with serpents who pollute motorways. He lives in LA. So I assume this means he's an environmental activist, but I'm not actually sure because there isn't really that much more information on him. Now, I didn't do a super deep dive. This is just what I found.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you said he was a screenwriter, I was like, that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, I think we'll get a little bit into this later, but there's just some, like, the book is a little bit sketchy and there's, like, things missing from it. There's not a lot of scenery descriptions, and sometimes the characters can see a little flimsy, and that's things that you would maybe expect from a screenwriter because settings is something you would leave to a production team, and, the actors would bring themselves to the characters.
Yeah.
So I read it and I was like, okay, this book makes a little bit more sense in this context.
And when JoJo says sketchy, she means like a sketch, not like it's creepy or not above board.
There's some sketchy things that we'll get into in the trigger warnings, but yeah, I mean, the world didn't feel filled in a way, though there is some parts that were really filled in that we'll talk about. So it seems like the author maybe picked his interests or his battles.
That being said, reminder to listeners, this is a spoiler-rich podcast, so if you don't want the book spoiled, please go read it now, and we will be here when you come back. But before you go, if you want to hear our trigger warnings for this episode, please listen to those first. So the trigger warnings that we isolated that we felt were important to mention were the fact that there is some kind of jarringly racist description of Roma and Chinese people, both in physical description and in cultural description, that I was really surprised by when we got to that point. I was like, ooh, it was pretty intense.
The Roma one in particular is shocking because it does not need to be in the book at all. We'll talk about it when we get there, but it's a very shocking scene with some very, very stereotypical depictions of Roma, a word they don't use. They use the other one.
Yeah, the book uses the slur, which we now understand as a slur, instead of Roma or Romani people. So, are you ready to talk about the plot?
Yeah. There's so much plot in this book. There's almost no room for anything else.
So, this book begins by telling us that dragons have evolved to look like lizard people. They once were the typical kind of dragons we think of that knights would fight, but since the medieval era, they have since evolved to be lizard people, and that they like to cause harm because they feed off of hatred, distress, unkindness. So these dragons are embedded in organized crime, authoritarian regimes, and international corporations, which I like that international corporations was one of the things. I do believe that Jason Hightman is pretty anti-capitalist from the way he's described some of this stuff, but really think lizard people, that conspiracy theory of lizard people, the kind that live below the Denver airport, the kind that are that one alien that people talk about when they talk about those three types of aliens.
Oh, we haven't mentioned this yet, but this is a retelling of it's sort of a modernization of Saint George and the Dragon. So we're going from the dragons of the myth to sort of these more lizard people.
Yeah, and the dragon in the myth of St. George is a completely evil creature. And the fact that the myth of St. George is supposed to be about accepting Christianity is also, the dragon is this sometimes it's depicted as a demon and sometimes it's depicted as a kind of a pagan belief system, is what it's symbolic of.
So we might be getting way, way ahead of ourselves, but I've been noticing a trend in these dragon books where like Saint George is the dragon version of the myth of Persephone and Hades, where what people are actually writing about it in modern days has absolutely like nothing, not nothing, but they take the bones of the myth and then they shake off all of the political and religious ideology that was inherent at the time to sort of plaster on a more modern version of that. And it looks kind of weird, but
Yeah, I still don't think either of the depictions that are St. George retellings that we've read, this and Prior of the Orange Tree is another one, are anywhere near as egregious as maybe any Hades and Persephone retelling that I've ever read or encountered. But that's a topic for another day. The reason I'm bringing this up as the fact that the dragon in the original St. George story is symbolic in some versions of pagan belief systems is because the lizard people conspiracy theory is sometimes linked to anti Semitism. And I didn't pick up on any feelings of anti Semitic sentiment when reading this book. But I am also not Jewish, and I was wondering if you did.
yeah, as a Jewish person, it's not anti-Semitic. It just very close to anti-Semitism. Yeah, I didn't get any anti-Semitism. Like if the dragons had had big nose or were like more specifically into money, we could like maybe talk. They have their hordes, but it's different. It just kind of rhymes to some degree, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. I just wanted to hear your opinion because you are part of that community. And this is something that is often combined with anti Semitic sentiment. But again, I don't really think that this book is doing that personally either. I think that it's literally just playing off of the idea of the lizard people and the conspiracy theory around them. So we meet Simon. He is a 13-year-old boy, short for his age, with a pug nose. And he lives at a boarding school that is also a lighthouse, oddly. He goes to a novelty shop to buy a mask for the school's Halloween party and chooses a knight's mask.
The depiction of women in this book is kind of interesting because there is like a female character that gets probably about as much complexity, if not more, as the male characters, but there's not a ton of ladies. And in this book, we have a hot girl that works at the novelty shop that Simon doesn't know her name and never learns it. And she's not actually a character in this book. He just like thinks about her once or twice.
Yeah, in the book's defense, there are only 4 characters. This is something that JoJo and we make sure to notice when there is a female character, how they're represented. And I would argue that the female character who does have more agency is still, in some ways, quite passive. But we'll get to that later.
The one thing I have to say while reading this book is it's such a dude's perspective part of book. It's about a son and his father. We haven't talked about it yet, but Simon is an orphan when we start this book. And it's just such from a guy perspective that you see it on the women characters pretty immediately.
Yeah, I also, just before we move on, want to talk about the Lighthouse School as kind of what we mentioned before, where I think the author has a lot of really cool ideas, like the Lighthouse School. That's really evocative as an image, but then he doesn't flesh out what that looks like. How does that work at all? Which again, I think hints towards the fact that he is a screenwriter. So his job is like, I'm going to put this idea here. I'm going to mention this clearly enough that we understand what it is. And then someone else will do the heavy lifting of making this actually visually complex enough for the viewer to understand. But in a book, that doesn't work because you need to describe everything. And he does this over and over and over again with the book, where there's this really cool thing that he's like, hey, I'm going to show you this thing. And in a movie or in a TV show, that would be enough in many cases. But in a book, it just doesn't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna use the word geometry and geography a lot because I just can't, I don't know where anything is in space a lot in this book, and I don't know where things are in relationship to each other,
Yeah.
which are things that are important when you can't see them because it's a book.
Yeah. A group of boys walk in and they're mean to him. He thinks about how he doesn't fit in because they all think he's a charity case. So he does not know who his dad is. He knows that someone is funding his ability to be at this school, that this is a very expensive private school. Someone is giving the school money for him to stay there, but he has never met them. The boys in his class think that he is a scholarship student, so they look down on him. So he really is separate from them. He doesn't have any friends. He says in one point that they would think he is a mystery. So Simon's not like other girls.
Aw.
So they all walk out. A bunch of bats and beetles that are all white swarm everywhere, and he thinks he sees a strange man with a tail walk across the street, and they all have to run to the trolley to take them back to campus because they're trying to escape this kind of swarming that's happening. And then we cut to Chicago. So in Chicago, we see three knights riding on horses down a street. They come to a house that is absolutely disgusting. I was kind of thinking of the house in the end of the first season of True Detective. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That level of disgusting. I don't know if it actually is that level of disgusting. And they go inside to face a dragon. So the dragon tries to trick them. It turns invisible. It has all this dragon magic. And Aldrich, who is one of the knights, is able to lance it through its body. They have to do what's called a death spell and bleed on the dragon, right?
I don't know. Here's the thing is that I read this a long time ago because my dog was very sick and then he passed and then we had a break and then we finished reading it. So the first couple of chapters are a little bit fuzzy. But we do learn about the dragon death spells, which seems less important later in the book, which is confusing.
I think that they are important. Aldrich says the only sure way to kill a dragon is through the death spell, but you can also use living flame, but you can't always predict what the living flame is going to do. So it might not work the way you want it to.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about how the dragon death spells become a MacGuffin.
Aldrich is able to kill it. It dies, and as it dies, it unleashes the last of its power and kind of creates this explosion. It explodes the house, which kills the other two knights immediately. Aldrich picks up the dragon skull. It's like bright red skull, and the skull actually then talks to him. He says, "I know about the boy," before it disintegrates, which I liked. I thought that was fun, that the skull was kind of talking and it was bright red, and I don't know, I like that.
I think it set up really cool stuff to begin with. I was like, wow, how is Aldrich going to deal with the fact that everyone he loves is dead and he's alone? I can't wait to see like the emotional journey this person goes on. It maybe set me up the wrong way because that's not really what happened.
Yeah.
I do agree that this was like a good scene.
We go back to Simon and he's cleaning the lighthouse, kind of hanging from it on a little thingy. Man comes and pulls out his phone. He's like, "Hey, I need to speak with you." And it's described that he says this in a loud whisper, which I actually really liked. Simon's super weirded out by this. He refuses. He's like, "This man is gross looking. He's wearing these shabby clothes. He has greasy hair. He has scars on his face and dirt on his face. Ew." And we do learn that Simon overheard someone speaking earlier that day, stating that a man came and asked for him, claiming that he was his father. And Simon's like, "This homeless man is not my father. Ew." So he ignores him.
It's really funny.
It is really funny.
It's so funny. He's like, my dad wouldn't be poor.
I was taking a sip of tea. I almost spit it when you said that. So at the Halloween festivities later, Simon walks out and he sees a man all in white. He's standing in front of, I think it's a Rolls Royce car, and he is claiming that he's Simon's father. And Simon's like, "This makes more sense." But then all the boys walk across a field as part of the festivities, and I honestly did not understand what the object of that was. But as they're walking, the shabby man from earlier rides in on a horse, grabs Simon, pulls him on the horse, and carries him away. There is some kind of a fight here. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's a kind of fight scene, and I think there was someone dangling off a lighthouse, but that might have been the earlier scene. And it's like really kind of hard to follow because there's not a lot of geography, like I said before. You don't really know where anyone is in the scene. I found it very confusing. You were able to like follow what the main action's supposed to be is, which is Simon and the homeless guy that's his dad managed to get away from whatever big scary white guy was there.
Well, it was the henchmen, I think, that were after them. But yeah, it was like that's why I didn't put a lot of information there. Simon is taken to a magical ship. We learn that this man is Aldrich, which I assumed. Aldrich is like, all right, are you coming with me? And Simon's like, well, I guess I'm going to get kidnapped. And then Aldrich takes him onto the ship, cooks him some eggs, and exposits for a while about what dragons are, who he is, and what they're doing. So he tells them that he is part of the Order of St. George. So they're all these descendants from St. George. They have special abilities, and that he is the last knight left, and Simon is his son, so Simon will also be able to take up the mantle. All of the knights also have a magician that they are bonded with, but all the magicians are dead. And he says that there is one dragon left, that they just have to kill one dragon, and then there are going to be no more dragons. And then they'll be done, and their task will be over.
Yeah, I found this really weird because 3 chapters ago, they're like, if anything bad is in the world, it's because of a dragon. And dragons are evil and they're hiding amongst us. And then they're like, by the way, they're all dead except for one. And I'm like, girl, I can see how many pages are in this book. Nice try. So it just felt like weird to be like, they're everywhere. And then be like, actually, there's one of them left. And then to be like, but like, the book's not going to be, the book is either going to be them spending the entire book fighting one dragon or something's not up. You know, it was like weird. It was confusing.
I think it's just a pacing issue.
Yeah, that's definitely what it was.
So Simon goes to bed. He wakes up in the hall of the ship with the horse. Aldrich then tells him, like, hey, you need to feed the horse. And Simon's like, but I haven't eaten yet. And I'm like, what are you doing, Aldrich? Why are you acting like this? Like, you did kidnap this kid. And then Aldrich gives him dragon meat that he took. Like, he, like, I guess slaughtered and, like, butchered the other dragon, but I thought they turned into ash.
This whole scene was like kind of weird because I was like, oh, Aldrich's gonna be a bad father. And like, it's really interesting that this guy who doesn't have any friends and doesn't have any social skills and like kind of doesn't have anything else going on, so he might as well get kidnapped, is like interacting with this like weird, crazy dude. And he's like, I guess I'll hunt a monster. But like, the dude's not doing anything to set him up to succeed. He's just sort of dragging him along like an emotional support dog. It's weird.
Well, he is a bad father. I think that the book is trying to show that he's an imperfect person. He has become this kind of rough and tumble guy who doesn't really know how to interact with people anymore after, he's been alone for so long. But it's like he hasn't. He had these two other knights with him until just recently. But men don't always know how to take care of each other or themselves and each other. So maybe that's a point that the author's trying to make.
I was just going to say, I think it's just a really interesting characterization that the book doesn't really do anything with. But once again, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I think the book wants to do something with it, and then it never does.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is an intentional choice, but I think it's just not fleshed out enough. A fox appears, and the fox cleans the ship and feeds the horse, but he's too mean to it. He is always yelling at this poor little fox that's like his slave. I don't understand what the point of this fox was. Do you know what the point of this fox was?
Whimsy. It's the same reason it's a lighthouse.
Yeah, I think the horse and the fox needed to be edited out. Like, I know in England, they have all these red foxes that are almost like pests. They're like the raccoons of America, where they're just everywhere. So I don't know if it was making a joke on that. I don't know if it was playing on the folklore of the fox, because I literally just read a book about folklore of the Japanese fox. And the Japanese fox specifically, like not Chinese, not Korean, but Japanese fox is a very helpful creature. It's very positive in people's lives. But the European folklore of the fox are way more mischievous and malicious than that. So I don't know if it's playing on a certain folklore tradition or if they're like a cute fox, let's add it in, but not give it any reason to be there. And then the horse doesn't really need to be there. He could have just grabbed Simon and run. They could have been walking down the street.
I took the horse to be like, oh, this dude is not living in modern times. He rides a horse. I thought it was like some of the more interesting characterization of Aldrich that makes him such a man out of time. But like I said, I think the fox is just there for like shiny window dressing.
Yeah, but they also use swords and shields and crossbows too to show the reader that he's a man out of time.
And a boat.
And a wooden boat. Yeah. Okay, anyway, he shows Simon a room full of weaponry and dragon skulls and hearts, and he shows him the collection of living flame that they've captured as well, and explains to him how to kill a dragon. This room is really cool. A lot of the weapons that are described here are also really cool, and they're not really brought up again. This is another example of, I think the author was like, I have this really good idea. I'm going to put this in here, but then kind of forgets about it later. And I like, he uses the crossbow throughout the book. And I just feel like there could have been a better through line in this area because it was really cool and I really enjoyed this scene. He talks about how like all the weapons kind of have a soul and are alive, so they have a little bit of a mind of their own, but then that doesn't really go anywhere.
I think the scenes on the boat are actually some of the best, partially because they are outside of the action, so you get to see some characterization. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that's just like because they seem cool and then it doesn't fit comfortably in the narrative that's trying to be told.
Yeah. So then we are introduced to the White Dragon of New York City, who has made his fortune through art forgery and is obsessed with whiteness. His apartment is white, he is white, his flame is white, he only eats white things. He also paints white paintings that he enchants to make people want them. And I was reading this and I got really excited when I was reading this because I really believe this is true. This is a commentary on the white cube, chromophobia, and the corporatization of art and the art market. And I was really excited about it. I was a little worried that it was a little bit of a statement against abstract expressionism as a whole, but there is another artist who's brought in who also seems to make abstract expressionist artworks, who is her art is spoken about positively in the book, and she is not a villain. So I don't think that's what it was. So just to give you some background on like what all of what I just said means. The white cube is a curational strategy that sprung up in the early 20th century and was a departure from the salon style curation that was dominant before. So salon style shows in a gallery setting generally display floor to ceiling paintings that are clustered close together. There is a hierarchy of subject matter within these paintings, so depending on the subject matter, something might be higher than another on the wall. And these spaces were generally highly decorative spaces, colorful walls, wall accents, decorative light fixtures, things like that. The white cube separates the work. So the work has multiple feet of space between it. There might only be one piece on a wall, giving enough space between each piece so that they can be viewed individually instead of in conversation with the other works. The white cube is generally a very void-like space. It's white walls, a concrete or a wooden floor, very minimalist light fixtures, so that you feel like the only sensory information that you are getting is coming from the paintings themselves. And this is now the dominant form of gallery curation within the West and completely has overtaken what we know of as the salon style gallery setting. So, why is this an issue in the art world and why does it need to be commented on? The white wall was actually popularized by the Nazis during the Third Reich when they were trying to promote whiteness as a form of purity. Before that, as gallery spaces became more minimalist, other colors were being used as a backdrop for these paintings, even as they were being separated from each other. And then whiteness became the color as fascism kind of swept through Europe. The white cube is also a symbol of the separation of art from the real world. So the idea is that when you walk into a gallery setting, you are stepping out of reality and are then able to experience artwork outside of your experience as a human and outside of sociopolitical issues, social movements, all of that stuff. So you're able to look at the work purely from a visual experience without any kind of baggage of anything else. And this became really clear. There was this pretty famous white cube gallery show when the white cube was starting to become dominant of cubist art, where all of the work was displayed just in the form of its visual relationship to each other as you walked through the gallery, instead of subject matter, instead of, what artist made it or the dates that these things are chronological order, which is really interesting because all art is political. All art has a statement, comes from our experience as humans. If you separate Cy Twombly's work from his Cy Twombly is a famous abstract expressionist painter, beautiful, beautiful work. It loses context. And you can view it just in formal aspects of line, color, and mark. But when you understand the content behind it, it becomes much more interesting. This is a huge issue that people are actually currently grappling with in the art world, and something that's very frustrating for artists throughout the Western canon. And it's something that we also see where art collectors are buying work from these white cube galleries that are existing in kind of this null space, and then curating their homes to look like this null space, and then donating them or selling them to museums that are also curated to be this null space. So we're seeing this reflection of gallery in the minimalism that's popping up in very high level, like high class apartments, because it's really difficult to keep a white apartment clean, right? It's very difficult to keep an apartment clean of clutter. So it's a statement on class and wealth when you're able to do something like that too, that you're able to not have things. And that's also, I think, a statement that he's making here, which is really interesting. I really loved. I really loved it. And that's why I'm talking about it for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think knowing about that is like so cool and interesting. And thanks for sharing. Because look, listener, I didn't know any of that stuff.
For those of you who don't know, the entire history of museums is one that is rooted in colonialism, looting of artifacts, and racism. And it's a really, really interesting place to study. So if you're interested in learning more about that, there are a lot of resources online.
We will not be reviewing any of them on our podcast. That's not really our gig, though.
No, unless it comes up in a book. But I really do believe that Jason Hightman understands this.
Yeah, a lot of really interesting ideas in this book.
So moving on, Aldrich and Simon camp out in a treehouse in Central Park that Aldrich made, and no one knows about it.
This is just like a violet in that tree again. Do people think that when they're in a tree, they're invisible, that the canopy is so dense that they cannot be seen from below? It's so confusing that they're just hanging out in a tree and they're like, no one can see us and this is normal.
It's lush. He tells Simon that dragons like to slow roast their brides, that they fall in love with human women all the time.
Okay. They don't say that they like to slow roast their brides. They say that the.
Yes, he does.
Does he literally say slow roast?
I think so. I think he does.
Okay. Well, they to be a little bit clearer, the dragons find the ultimate showing of love is to consume something. There's a lot of really interesting things on the hoard and consuming in this way that each dragon does, but specifically towards women, they like consume them with their fire, and that's like the ultimate show of love. And whether or not it's fast or slow roasted, I can't remember, but Joe seems to think that it's slow roasted.
Anyway, he creeps real hard on a woman who is the gallerist of this gallery, and her name is Alethea. And she is the one who is also making these color field paintings, but is remarked on positive. Like her paintings are remarked on positively, and they're not white, they're green and gold. I think that there is some issue with people discounting an entire painting or art movement as, oh, that's bad, because that's not true. So I was worried with that. But the fact that he does seem to have a much more nuanced take on this dragon is making these white color field paintings because he knows he can sell them. So this, again, corporatization of the art market, which is something that New York City is really having trouble grappling with right now. And then the fact that this other woman who's making these for the love of it and because she really finds beauty in this painting style shows that he has a good understanding.
Sure, just to complicate it a little bit, we do find out that they're plot important later. But
Oh yeah, well, but so
while they're in the tree, Simon is like, "Do you like this woman?" And Aldrich is like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." And it's a little weird that Aldrich seems to like this character before she's even properly introduced to him.
I mean, I think it's supposed to be weird. Through the way it's narrated, Simon seems like, why is my dad being so weird about this? Like he's obviously aware of that. And Simon asked Aldrich, like, well, why don't we just talk to her? Like, why do we have to just like watch her from afar? And Aldrich's like, well, I tried and she wouldn't listen. And then Simon looks at him and is like, yeah, because he looks like a crazy person. Of course she wouldn't listen to him. So I think the book is winking at us and is like, yes, he likes her, but he doesn't know how to talk to women. And he also doesn't know how to take care of himself. And Simon is recognizing all of this and is like, okay, we have to figure out a different way of dealing with this then.
Yeah,
Which I enjoyed.
Simon's like, "Dad doesn't have any game." Got it. Moving on.
Yeah. All right. So we get the perspective of the dragon and Alethea then. So the dragon calls her, she invites him to dinner, and Simon and Aldrich then follow him to her apartment. And there's a big fight scene.
It's just kind of a weird fight scene. So it starts with Alanthea. That's how you say her name?
Alethea?
Alethea.
Alethea? I don't know if it's Alethea or Alethea.
All right. I'll do Alethea, and you can do Alethea, and
Okay.
people can figure out which one they like the best. Alethea is like under the spell of the painting that the white dragon has brought. So we find out that only the St. George descendants can see the dragons in their like dragon form. Everybody else is just like, that tall guys, weird. Like they literally can't see that they're monsters. So it kind of makes sense that she's like, come on in, let me stare at this painting. She's also like kind of out of it for the whole fight, and they have to like kind of keep dragging her around the fight. So we kind of learn that Aldrich, who has spent the book being weird and like kind of crazy, is actually like super good at this. The first fight seemed like he was outmatched and outclassed, but he's like pretty much handling the dragon on his own without Simon. And Simon's just kind of like, I'm here.
And why would Simon be good at it too? Like Simon's like, I'm 13. I don't know how to do any of this. You haven't taught me really any practical things yet. So it makes sense too that he would be kind of just in the way.
Yeah, it starts like this weird convoluted thing that the book does, which is like Aldrich doesn't need any help. And then Simon is also like here because Aldrich can't be the point of view character because this is a book for boys. So Simon does like try to help, but because he's like 13 and learned about dragons a week ago, he's like really bad at it. It comes a theme that he keeps being like, I can help. And like the narrative is like, no, you can't. They like destroy her whole apartment and then it explodes.
The building explodes.
So here's the thing is actually the building explodes, but then like it doesn't explode, just a part of the apartment explodes. This is kind of a thing also where they'll be like, everything's destroyed. Actually, not everything's destroyed. And it's like, I'm not sure if I misread it or if the geometry is just kind of weird. So it could be both, or if they wrote one thing and then in the next and then like changed their mind and then went back and read it. It's confusing. So the whole apartment explodes except for just part of it, except for just where the dragon was. There's like a spot where he like burned in all of the ashes white because, you know, theming is very important.
So we think he's dead. Simon and Aldrich retreat to their ship and they celebrate. And then the next morning they're like, well, I guess we should check on Alethea.
Yeah, they're like, oh, yeah, she doesn't have a home. Wonder what she's up to.
We destroyed her home. It's like that SpongeBob episode where they're like destroyed Bikini Bottom and they're like, we saved the town. They actually do kind of help her clean. And while they're helping her clean up, Simon finds some coins. And Aldrich is like, oh, well, these were once exchanged to symbolize friendship between dragons, who are generally solitary creatures. But that symbol on the coin is not one that I recognize. I don't recognize that dragon. And they realize that there must be another dragon.
So I was like more annoyed at this when that happened. The guy explodes and leaves a clue that will like help them get to the next clue, which will help them get to the MacGuffin, which will help them. And I was like, all right. When you get to the end of the book, you're like, oh, that was a little bit less stupid than it seemed. It's another thing where the book is like, the world's full of dragons. And then the book is like, there's only one left. And then a third of the way through the book, they're like, oh, wow, we didn't kill all of the dragons in the first third of the book, and we have to keep killing dragons. There's so much emotionally interesting stuff in this story that like they kind of didn't touch, because I was just thinking about how would you have felt if you were a man who basically just like reconnects with his son that he's forced to be apart from to keep him safe. Like Simon's like, I don't think it needed to be like that. But anyway, so like in his mind, he's like, I had pushed my family away at great loss for myself so I can achieve this goal of killing all of the dragons. Everyone I love has died along this path, and I have reconnected with my son, and now I have killed the final dragon, and I can finally live the life I want to be, and then immediately find out that there's like more dragons. That would be like so crushing, and it would be such an interesting journey for him to like go on of the giving up hope. You know, just like this humongous burden was lifted off his back. His ancestors have been fighting dragons for generations. St. George, you know, the 1300s?
I don't know exactly when that myth popped up for the first time, but you know, it's medieval. It's a medieval story. It could be even earlier. It could be 800s. I don't know. After Christianity began, certainly. But, you know, that's a long time.
Anyway, 800 years, his family legacy is finally completed. And then he's like going through the trash. Hi, Lark. And then he's like going through the trash and he finds out that actually, you know, everything he's believed is a lie and he has to like go back out there and like kill again. That's gotta be so emotionally devastating and like such an interesting book to read and deal with. And Aldrich just doesn't react at all.
Oh, yeah.
He's just like, that was annoying. Back to the grind.
Yeah. Yeah, but none of them really respond emotionally to anything, really. They're just like, anyway, let's next plot point.
Alethea, literally in the next scene, they go to leave and they're like, well, back to the dragon killing. And Alethea is like, wait, I want to follow you. And they're like, okay. She like throws her entire life out the window to like follow them and like doesn't react at all to it, you know?
Yeah, she doesn't even tell anyone like, "Hey, I'm gonna be out of town for a few days." Everyone thinks she's dead because her apartment exploded. And then she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna follow you because I had a vision that I saved you from something." And Aldrich's like, "Don't." And she's like, "Well, I can tell you where that coin came from because of my art history background," which I actually liked that she was like, "I know that came from Venice because I studied this in school." And that is something that, like, an art historian would probably know. So Aldrich's like, "Fine, you can come with us because of your art history background." So they all go together onto the ship and they learn that she's been painting these kind of color field paintings with these runes on them and that the runes are the dragon language, but she doesn't know what they say. She just is like, "Well, I have visions of them, so I paint them." This is never really explained why she doesn't have any memory.
No, you nailed it when you said that it was a plot contrivance to depower a powerful woman.
That's like a common trope is that they have an overpowered magic user. It's not always a woman, but it's usually a magic user. And they can't make them all powerful all at once. So they give them memory loss. So then they're having to refigure out their powers throughout the span of the story. And that's happening here. And then we have another trope. So Aldrich tells Simon about his dead mother. So we have a dead mom alert. Dead mom alert. Wee woo, wee woo. So his mother was a magician, and she made everything on the ship. And Aldrich does not know how anything on the ship actually functions. So he's like, I don't know, it might stop working at any time.
Yeah, it is weird that they're like, your mom's dead and she made everything on the ship, and I don't know how any of it works. And you're just like, oh, could it break at any moment? It's another thing that they set up that they don't deal with. And it's just also funny because I think it's supposed to like be a tension, like at any moment, we don't know if the ship will break, and if it breaks, we can't fix it. But it really makes him look like a dad who is kind of useless and the mom runs everything. And then she's like out of town for a trip, and he's like, I guess we'll order pizza because I don't know how any of the kitchen works.
Yeah, he is a very microwave dinner kind of dad. Also, like, how devastating would it be if in the book at some point the ship were to stop working and then that's like the last thing he has of his wife and then it's done. It's done. He doesn't have that anymore. And then the actual only last thing he has is Simon. But the book doesn't explore that at all, really.
Yeah, the book's not concerned with loss except for it's interested with loss as a thing that makes a character interesting, but it's not interested in loss as like a thing a character will process that will actually make them interesting.
Yeah, they arrive in Venice and they track the medallion down to a jeweler. And he tells them that the dragon lives beneath the city. They realize that he's being kind of watched by the dragon through an eel tank in his jewelry establishment. The dragon then appears. It is a water dragon, which makes sense. Aldrich tries to fight it. It creates this rainstorm that makes all the jewelry fly around in like this water spout and they become projectiles. Before the scene started, Aldrich did give Simon a magic crossbow and he loads it. He shoots the bolt into the rainstorm, but he actually hits his dad and the dragon runs out. And then Aldrich's just like kind of annoyed. He's like, you hit me with this thing. And then they pursue the dragon through the canals of Venice. It's kind of confusing. Simon then shoots Aldrich again accidentally. So he shoots his dad twice, which is kind of funny. I thought because the whole time Simon's like, "Well, I do actually know how to fence," and his dad's like, "No, you are going to have the crossbow," and he's like, "I don't know how to use a crossbow," and so it's like this little thing that keeps going on.
Yeah, it's the best bit of physical comedy. It's like I lose the arrow, and then it hits my dad, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know where anyone is in this scene, but that's funny. And then he's like, I'm gonna shoot another arrow, and I'm like, is he gonna hit his dad again? And then he's like, it's his dad. I was like, oh my god, Simon, quit while you're ahead.
He shoots the arrow at the end of a chapter and he feels really victorious. And then at the beginning of the next chapter, it's like, yeah, I hit Aldrich. And it's, I don't know, I thought that was funny. Alethea does assist. She is almost drowned. Like one of the hench people put her head underwater and is trying to drown her. And so she has this near death experience. And then she can suddenly read the dragon language. And then Aldrich's like, oh, yeah, that's because you had a near death experience. Which is like, what? This isn't explained.
You missed so much. Sorry, you missed the gondola, magic speedboat, the dragon running in and out of the water. But I get it because I had so much trouble with the geography in this scene. I couldn't figure out where anyone was. At one point, the dad is in a building, and then Simon shoots him from the street, and the dragon is there, but also he gets out, and there's henchmen. Yeah, I was really confused. And then Alethea is drowned, but like I've been to Venice and it's not like the water is like right at street level. It's a couple, feet down in a way that would make sense. So I was a little bit confused. It was really confusing how he like got her in the water.
Just hanging her by her little ankles, dipping her.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to say because it's too silly. Anyway, the dragon gets away.
The dragon gets away, and Aldrich then yells at Simon, and Alethea's like, hey, I learned something. And Aldrich's like, not now. I need to threaten this hench person, which is like the one henchman that's still there. And Alethea's like, but I learned something. And she's also trying to defend Simon. Simon's like, ha, my friend, Alethea. But Aldrich's like, I'm gonna threaten this. He's not getting anywhere. Simon then bribes the the henchman, with a diamond that had fallen into his pocket in the jewelry establishment. And then the henchman is like, oh, this mansion is where the headquarters are. And Alethea's like, oh my God, I already knew that. You didn't have to do all this bullshit. I could have told you all of that, but you didn't listen to me because you have trouble listening to women, obviously, Aldrich. She doesn't actually say that, but I was thinking that in my mind.
Alethea's always right, and Aldrich never listens to her. This is also like a weird thing where Aldrich is like, hey man, when I tell you to stop, like stop doing stuff, you're not helping. He's got 2 arrow wounds. And Simon's like, come on, you don't let me do anything. And I'm like, your dad has 2 arrow wounds. I think this becomes the major conflict of the book where like it's about Simon earning Aldrich's trust. I asked you at one point while we were reading this, and I was like, does Simon have a underlying need that like drives the plot that he will get fulfilled through the story as it goes forward? Very typical normal thing for a main character to have. And you were like, no. And I was like, cool, 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 cool.
Yeah, Simon has no agency. He's like a romantic-y female protagonist. No agency. He's just dragged around by a buff, grumpy man.
Yeah, so this is them like establishing the closest thing to a character arc that they have, and it kind of doesn't work because I think Simon shouldn't shoot his dad twice in the leg, even if he was trying to help. Oh, sorry, once in the leg and once in the arm.
Aldrich is able to heal his wounds, and he comments about how St. George's have exceptional healing abilities, but he pours this magic substance onto his wounds and they heal right away. So he has this kind of cure-all. They then go to this mansion. It's waterlogged, it's full of eels. Aldrich is just casually robbing the place because they enter the den and it's full of this hoard of diamonds that are just like stuck to the wall, and he's just grabbing them, putting it in his pocket. And Simon's like, what are you doing? He's like, how do you think I paid for that school? Which I thought was kind of funny.
The lairs, just like the dragons, are like some of the best parts of this book. These are like grimy, gross porterhouse places. Each one is like specific to the rot that is in each type of dragon. This one's like sinking into the canal, and that's why this guy took it over. And it's sort of about the moral decay of what's going on with his stuff and the people around it. There's like rats and bugs and stuff, and you have this description of them walking through all of these eels, which sounds awful. I would hate to walk through eels.
I like eels.
Okay.
I think they're cute. I don't know. What kind of eels were these? What are we talking about? Are we talking about a moray? Like, what are we talking about with these eels? Like, I want to know. But that was not set. I think they're electric eels, so they're not moray eels. But I don't know. I just think eels are kind of cute. Yeah, I like their buggy eyes.
They're evil eels, though. Like, there's like cats that are evil in this, but these eels specifically are waiting for the call from their master to get you, and you're walking through them surrounded. I love snakes, and even I can see that Indiana Jones is in a bad situation when he falls into that pile of snakes, you know?
I suppose. No, I know. I get it. I don't know. I like eels. I think they're cool. I don't know. Anyway, they walk through the dragon's den. Alethea is able to read the dragon script now, so she's like, oh, he has a plan to destroy all humans. And they're like, you don't say. And then they find this magic map, and then they leave. And the eels start to like jump at them while they leave, but they are able to get out. Alethea reads the map, and she finds a notation about the Book of St. George, which is on the coast of the dead.
Spooky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even like really go into details. They're just like, they're gonna end the world and it's gonna be bad and it says so. And you're like, all right, well, cool.
Yeah. Simon finds a white mouse and he's like playing with it. And Aldrich's like, Simon, stop playing with that shit. Be a man. And Simon's like, I'm going to keep it now.
He's scared of it at first, which I thought was like obviously the author being like, this is a bad mouse, the white mouse that came from the evil lair. It's just so obviously a trap. And we've already seen Simon not listening to his dad, and it blows up specifically in his dad's face, or once in the arm and once in the thigh, as we previously saw. So it's just so kind of weird for like Simon to take this rat that's obviously evil and gonna set them up for failure. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think there's never been a child with worse instincts than Simon. He just really has no self-preservation.
Well, he grew up in a lighthouse with no friends. I don't know. How would he have learned that? I don't know. They decide to go to the coast of the dead. While they are embarking, we do have a chapter describing another dragon, which is the dragon of Paris. This dragon is described as harassing women. He hates children. He likes to like set fire to schools, which is a crazy thing to write into a book. He eats paintings. He collects paintings and he eats paintings and paint. Unlike the white dragon, he really likes color. And I actually thought that this was also a commentary on art collectors because there's something that happens in the art world with really high level art collectors where they're not collecting art because they like the work. They're collecting art because they view it as an investment. So if the artist is living, they will, try to collect the work early in their career and then resell it once they become very famous, right? And they'll do this with the art of dead artists too. There's a lot of art trafficking that happens because of this. They're trafficking art because they're investing in these art. And this art is just stored in these warehouses. It's never seen again. So it might as well be eaten. Also, sometimes these warehouses burn down, they get waterlogged, all the work inside is destroyed. This is something that happens all the time, and it's a huge problem. And so I really feel like Jason Hightman was making a comment on this, especially with the white dragon a few chapters earlier. I just thought that was interesting.
If you could be racist against French people, this would be, it's just the most stereotypical French thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, he eats paintings, but he also really likes pastries, which was funny. So they get to the coast of the dead, which was hexed by a bunch of wizards after the clash that happened there centuries before. And then we have a chapter where the Venetian dragon.
He takes a plane. I have to say the like narration, just like take a step back. The narration on this is like kind of a little bit all over the place where like sometimes it'll be like really hard on one person, their point of view, and then it'll have like a really narrative third person omniscient thing where it'd be like, and then over here something completely different was happening. But it doesn't stay throughout the book. And then you also get all of these interludes about dragons, which I'm not mad about. They're like some of the best part of the books.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Venetian dragon is over here now. It took a plane, and you're like, cool.
Yeah, I mean, the Venetian dragon is really creepy about this flight stewardess who has a gold watch, and he's like, "Oh, where'd you get the gold watch?" And she's like, "Oh, my grandmother gave it to me." And he's like really into the gold watch, but he also is being really creepy towards her. And then it says at the end of the flight that she has disappeared and that the gold watch is in his stomach. So there's like this inherent violence against women that all of these dragons have, which I thought was kind of interesting as a statement regarding that kind of person.
I also think that there's the notion of the horde, and we start to see it more and more where the Venetian dragon likes to eat jewelry and watches and stuff like that. So we see him eat it, and then there's like the description of it like inside of his belly, which is really cool. So that's like a fun thing in this. But yeah, there's a lot of dead women in this.
Yeah. So Aldrich then explains that all magicians are women and that love is what makes them vulnerable. So he says that when he and Simon's mother fell in love, it was like a beacon to these dragons where they sense romantic love and then they want to destroy it. So then they try to find the woman. Simon's mother, Aldrich's wife, was murdered by the white dragon who took her as his bride and then slow roasted her. And they're like so attracted to destruction of romantic love that being in love makes the magician vulnerable, which was, I don't know, I hate that trope.
I just think it's just a weird mechanic to have in the book. Magic's real and sure, and they do like a really loosey goosey version of it, which is like fine, whatever. Like magic lashes out from the dragons and it's weird or whatever. And then I'm gonna make this boat that goes fast, and then also magic is very much like whatever the plot needs or whatever, but it's like a loosey goosey thing. But just having a dragon that has no extra extraordinary senses except for romantic love, I just wanted a little bit more scaffolding for the sense because it's just so weird, not attached to anything else in the magic of this world.
And not just any love. What if they were also attracted to the love that Aldrich feels for his son? Familial love. It's just romantic love. This is a trope that actually crops up in a lot of books about witches, where it's always a woman, female witch, will lose her powers when she falls in love, gets married, forms some kind of attachment, which is always to a man. It's always a heterosexual partnership that I've witnessed. And maybe if you're listening and you're like, well, actually, I have this example where she is gay and she still loses her power, I still think it's a problem. And this sets up this dichotomy that a woman can either be powerful or be a mother, right? We have this gender stereotype, this gender norm thing that then is reaffirmed through this plot device and through this trope. And I have never, ever seen it swapped where a male magic user loses his power when he falls in love with a woman. I've only ever seen it with a woman who is a magic user who falls in love with a man. And I don't know if it's just because women are more often portrayed as magic users and men are more often portrayed as warrior fighters, but it is a trope that really, really bothers me. I don't know if you want me to share this yet, JoJo, but we are thinking about doing witches for our next season. And I've been compiling a list of witch books that we can read. And I keep seeing this in the descriptions of these plots that I am reading as I'm doing my research to try to find books. And it's really, really frustrating and infuriating.
So, listeners, we're not going to be doing dragons forever. We have a list of witch books and we have a list of unicorn books that we're going to be reading. We'll probably say it again, not buried in the middle of an episode. But if you have any dragon, witch, or unicorn books, comment here.
Yeah. So the ship is suddenly surrounded by these sharks that are made of ice, and Aldrich realizes that there's a spy aboard, which it's obviously the mouse. They fight the sharks. Simon is able to save Aldrich. Aldrich denies it, and Simon gets really mad about this. Alethea then says a spell to the ship, and it causes the ship to speed away, but she's not able to stop it, and it crashes into the coast. And Aldrich gets really upset because his dead wife made the boat.
I mean, and then we get the absolute annulment of tension. We talked about how if they lose the boat, they'd be trapped, and it's the only thing about his dead wife, and blah, blah, blah. The boat can heal.
Yeah.
He's like, nah, the boat will heal. It's like, what?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess he's like, it'll take time though. And it's like, but it still will heal. They like go through, they like dig up a grave. They find the Book of Death spells. They realize that hundreds of dragons could still be alive. So this is a separate Book of Death spells from the one that Aldrich was using. And he just like casually is like, oh yeah, like there were two factions of St. George's who separated from each other because then if one died or like got captured by the dragons, they wouldn't be able to give any information. And I'm like, you didn't think maybe like that was important information to say earlier or important information to understand that like maybe there are other dragons, but also that there might be some people alive from that other faction if you don't know anything about them?
I think they kind of implied that that faction ended literally where they are, and that's where the book is.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know why they don't have two books with both sets of names. I don't understand why they don't write the dragon names down and like information immediately, because they don't keep the MacGuffin for that much longer.
Well, I mean, Aldrich says that when a dragon is born, the name appears in the book. So I don't know, like, how, who's deciding which book these names appear in? But he also says that the books can't be destroyed, that they're impervious. So I don't know if he just thinks like, well, it can't be destroyed, so we're gonna have it. But you'd think they would want multiple copies.
Do you think they were alphabetical and they're like, we've killed all of the dragons from N to W, which is White Dragon. Clearly there aren't any more dragons.
White Dragon, I think his name is like Tyrannus or something. Or no, that's the Parisian dragon. He does have another name. I forget what it is.
Yeah, but there's a lot of silliness happening here.
Yeah. There are also like a ton of dead dragons like all over the place that are like eternally smoldering. And Aldrich is really mad, so he shoots a dragon, which causes an explosion. And he explains that this is because dragon magic clashes with itself, and because the bolts have that living flame in them, it's two different dragons. Or I guess he lights it on a different dragon's flame and then shoots it into another dragon. So when multiple dragons are in the same place, it's really bad for reality because their magic clashes and fights with itself. And then it causes kind of rifts in reality, all kinds of bad stuff. it's not compatible.
This is the scene that just sets up the climax of the book.
They're then found by a bunch of Russian soldiers and are taken to the mansion of a Russian dragon. While this is happening, Aldrich is able to hypnotize them with a magic sword, and they are able to sneak in.
It's so crazy that there's just this sword that when somebody looks at it, they instantly become hypnotized for days, like instant thralls. And it is so powerful, a stop for basically like every henchman. And like maybe it doesn't work on the dragons or whatever, but they get the stuff kicked out of them. It's just such an overpowered item to introduce late in the game.
Oh, I totally agree. So we meet the Russian dragon. And I was really hoping that they were gonna have continue with the art theme and that he maybe was, like, censoring art or maybe he was really obsessed with communist propaganda or something, because classic communist propaganda art is, like, so interesting. But he actually just loves cats, and he is plagued by the voices of his victims of men and women, and I assume, of people who he has sent to their death in wars, because he is a general.
That's what like he keeps in his tummy hoard. One person has like gems, one person has paintings, and the other one has all the men that I've killed, which is insane.
Full of ghosts. I feel like that's a very Russian thing. So he can't currently control his fire because of his proximity to the Venetian and Parisian dragon, so we realize that they have both come to visit him. Aldrich, Simon, and Alethea, they sneak in. They see the three dragons talking.
First, you have the first of many like trap floors where the enthralled Russian soldiers like walk up and are like, "We are here to see the dragons," and then they fall through the trap door, and then they're like, "Well, that's all the people we needed to trap," and then like Aldrich, Simon, and Alethea are just like crawl around it. It's a very silly scene, and also there's so many trap floors in this book. I don't understand it.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah, so they sneak in, they see the three dragons talking. The dragons are talking about a master, but they're not sure what that is. And Simon then is like, "Hi, I have a clean shot." And he shoots one with his crossbow and he blows their cover.
Yeah, it's a very Leroy Jenkins.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, I'm going to explain to you a very old meme. Once in World of Warcraft, a group of people got together to do a raid. I think that's what they call it. I've never played. And you get like a bunch of people together, and they're like people from like all over the world who have like come together in their individual characters to do a thing. And then somebody just screams Leroy Jenkins and rushes in while everyone's getting ready. And it's like a hot mess because no one's prepared for the fight. Anyway, so now that I've explained that meme, Simon does that with a crossbow and takes everyone by surprise, including his compatriots, and now they're in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, he really ruins that one. They fight. The dragon's fire is uncontrollable. There is a really cool description that I really loved of the Parisian dragon's fire. He's like pushing Simon against the wall because, again, he hates children, so he goes after Simon first. And it says that his fire is like dripping out of his mouth like liquid paint. It's like electric blue and it's just burning as it's hitting the ground. I loved that. And I wish there was more of I know I say every single episode that I wish there was more dragons. But I just wish there was more dragon in this book.
The thing is that like not only are the dragons like the most interesting and like complex characters in it, their spaces are more fleshed out, their scenes are more interesting.
Yeah.
I think the author agrees with you that there should be more dragons in their book, and they were like trying to like spend less time with Simon and Aldrich and giving them all of the screen time so they could instead give the screen time to the dragons.
Yeah, maybe.
These are really good dragons.
They're cool. They're super cool. Do you want to talk about the rage fire?
Yeah, they introduced that they spit rage fire that takes like a form, which is kind of cool, but also like completely out of left field. And these rage fires are like maybe also not people, more like spirits or sprites where they're kind of crafty and have a mind of their own. It's a cool concept, but it's so random.
Well, I think it's in part because the dragons are together for the first time. I don't think it happens when they're alone.
There's not enough information in the book for me to like agree or disagree.
Oh, okay. The fire burns through the floor and they fall through into a bear pit for some reason.
Chapter number 2.
Number 2.
They're not really doors because they're just the floors that give out.
There don't seem to be any bears in the bear pit currently, but the little firelings, the rage fire creatures, fall through with them. The Parisian dragon's like, "Sucks to suck, a motherfucker," and then says something in French, which Simon's like, "I think I understood that," but he doesn't tell us, the reader, what it is yet, because that's to be revealed later.
Which is crazy because, like, literally we've had Simon and Aldrich being like, we're watching this woman waiting for the white dragon to show up. And then the narration of the book is like, little did they know over here. And like gives us more information than the point of view character would have. And then in this scene specifically, gives us less information than the point of view character has. I know why they're doing it so they can reveal it later, but it just feels weird when they were giving us so much information and now they're not.
Just to tell you what it actually is, they're saying, like, we need to go to Beijing. And the Parisian dragon uses the word Peking, which is, I guess, the old term for Beijing. So wouldn't anybody in any language be able to hear that word and be like, oh, he just said a city?
Yeah, like literally everybody should have had that information. And maybe Simon is the only one who can understand French accents, you know?
Maybe. In the bear pit, which has no bears, Alethea then uses her magic and she touches Simon and Aldrich's armor, and then they're able to fly. So they escape. But the whole city is burning and they sit in a partially burned cafe. Oh, the dragons take that book of St. George from them, so they don't have that anymore.
Yeah, the thing that has all of the dragon death spells, that's like the only thing that can kill a dragon, gone. The MacGuffin's gone. And they had it for like 2 minutes.
While they're sitting in this cafe, Alethea is looking at a bunch of international magazines that this random cafe in the middle of Russia has, and they have a New York Times. And so she reads the art and culture section, and she finds out that everyone thinks she's dead, and she gets really upset and she leaves.
She finds the one cafe that has a New York Times article that's just old enough to be the one that reported on her death, even though it's been weeks and weeks.
Well, who knows how much time has actually passed? It could be days.
Yeah, they cross the ocean multiple times in this. Like they're going around on a boat. And like it gives the sense that time has passed. That isn't just like a little bit of time. But there's absolutely no way of knowing if any amount of time that has passed during this book.
Yeah, it's a magic boat, so who knows how long it took them. Simon is annoyed by this. Aldrich later admits that he said what he said to Alethea during their fight. He's like, oh, fine, don't leave. Because he wanted her to be safe. And Simon then is like, well, I think that the Parisian dragon mentioned Beijing.
Wait, yeah, Alethea just walks out and then she's gone. And you're like, what? Okay, I guess.
How did they get up to Russia from Venice? I'm going to look at a world map.
Don't forget the coast of death.
I'm just going to look up map of Europe. I just need to know because this is bothering me. Okay, so Italy's there. Okay, maybe there's a strait in Istanbul. They moved through Istanbul. So they went around Greece, through Istanbul, and then across the Black Sea. Maybe. Unless I guess they could have gone all the way around Spain and the UK and then past Norway and Denmark and then cross Finland and Estonia. That would take forever. So they could have done that, I guess. Anyway, back to the plot.
Geography is not this book's strong suit.
Coming up, we do have the very, very racist stereotypes regarding the Roma people. And it's when they rent a private jet to go to Beijing. So they can't take the boat because the boat's in the shop. And they decide to rent a private jet, which is owned by a bunch of Roma people. And how would you describe this scene?
So unnecessarily racist. They could have just flown in a normal jet with a dude who was like, we'll take you for money or whatever. But instead, he decided to recreate the topsy-turvy scene from Hunchback of Notre Dame in this airplane for no reason. The most the characters interact with them is to be like, man, they're noisy and I'm trying to be sad and think and sleep. You could have just not been racist.
They could have just made it like the pilot that was in The Mummy. You know that guy?
No,
The pilot in The Mummy.
I haven't seen The Mummy.
Oh, you haven't? What?
Okay, let's put it this way. I'm almost positive that I have seen The Mummy, but I was young enough that I don't retain any memories from it.
Okay, we're watching that next.
Okay.
It has Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser in it.
Look, I am pretty sure I watched it because Brendan Fraser in any movie with a hot girl was my jam. As a bisexual woman, there's like beautiful people on both sides and it's great. I watched George of the Jungle a lot.
I love George of the Jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good movie. That holds up. I watched that recently. It's still pretty good. They use puppets for the animals, so the animals look amazing.
Speaking of like a really fun narrator that like does commentary on the book, I was hoping that when we got peeks of this in the book of it contradicting what the point of view characters were saying to like go to the dragons, I was like, are they going to do like a little George of the Jungle thing? And it's like, no, they just did it for like that one moment.
Yeah. But anyway, again, it's a very harmful stereotype, the way that they're depicting these people.
And it did need to happen.
They could have just flown on public transportation. They find the dragon lair really quickly once they get to Beijing because, again, of some really horrific stuff that feels kind of racist. They talk about like walking through the streets of Beijing and they talk about how dragon magic leaks and creates ripples so that it harms the environment that they're in. And one of the things that it talks about is like all these people are starting to like meld together and become one person. And it calls them Siamese twins, which is a racist term and it's not even accurate to like the person who or the twins who were originally called that in their, their sideshow. Though their life is really interesting. So if you want to look that up, very intriguing.
We're telling people to look up a lot of stuff and not read this book.
If anything, this book has given us a lot to talk about, right? And that's like just way more horrific than any other thing that any of the other dragons are causing. What? These people are melding together and becoming this conglomerate? It's terrifying. Anyway, they go into this cave, this tunnel. Aldrich tells Simon, wait here. Simon's like, no, I can fight. Aldrich's like, no, you cannot. You have proven that you cannot many times. So no, you can't. Stay here. And Aldrich leaves.
To be fair to Aldrich, he's right.
No, he's right. He's totally right. And obviously he would care about his 13-year-old son and not want his son to rush into danger. Then Simon like just starts kind of wandering because he feels a bird fly past him and he finds the dragon in a kitchen and he's making soup.
It was so funny. I don't know if this is what it was supposed to be, but his dad goes left and he's just hanging there and then he's like, oh, and then walks right like 4 steps and finds the dragon.
Yeah. Again, so there's some racist language surrounding physical attributes of Asian people in the description of this dragon. And I'm not going to read them. But it is a black dragon. This dragon is black. So situated opposed to the white dragon, I suppose. The dragon is like, oh, come here, eat some soup. He talks to Simon. He claims that he is a light dragon and he is against the dark dragons and that all the other dragons are dark dragons. He asks Simon to help him get to his boat. This dragon is like, I'm so old and frail. I'm almost 200 years old. Which you have a note in here that you were like, I really thought they were older than that. And I also thought that they were way older than that.
Yeah, I wonder if they're trying to get around like the reason they need the books because they have the magic is because the dragons have been like reproducing over the years, but they just go on and on and on about how like dragons don't reproduce, but none of the dragons are older than like a couple hundred years old. And especially the Chinese dragon is like, I'm 200, and the Russian dragon's like 2 or 3 too. But I don't understand why the Chinese dragon is so much older. I thought they were going to say 2000, like I originally misread it, because typically I feel like in these books, Asian dragons are older just because Asian cultures are older than Western ones.
Well, isn't there that myth that like when a dragon reaches 1,000, it gets a pearl? It has a little pearl. It's a little pearl, the pearl that it has that holds his little hand. A little pearl.
Yeah, we're off topic. It was weird. He's like, I'm ancient. I'm 200. It's like when 25-year-olds are like, oh, I can't stay out anymore. I'm so old. And you're like, girl, get to the club.
I felt like that when I was 20. But yeah,
The Chinese dragon should be in the club, which is what I'm saying.
he does belong in the club. Eating soup in the club. Aldrich then appears, he shoots the dragon, but Simon is able to help the dragon escape. They make it to his boat and Simon heals him with the magic ointment. He then tells Simon that they have to go to London to meet with the other light dragons.
I was kind of annoyed by this scene because I found a weird tension, and I don't know if you experienced it, and it might have just been in my head, where the book wanted you to be on Simon's side when he's making all of these bad choices, but it's so clear that the book also shows that he only makes bad choices. I don't know, it was kind of like I watched a review of One Battle After Another, and it has Paul Thomas Anderson and Leo talking about his character, and Paul Thomas Anderson talks about how writing the story, he kept being like, should Leo's character win like this one time because he's failed through this entire movie? And they're like, no. And it's like kind of a funny choice. And the book is kind of like this too, but then I'm not sure if it wants us to be like, yeah, Simon's dad, trust him, or if it wants us to be like, Simon, please stop. You're so bad at this. Like, sit down. I don't know. It was like a weird tension between what it was trying to say and what it was saying.
I read it a little bit differently. I read it as similarly, Simon is bad at those things. He's not able to really do a lot. He makes a lot of mistakes. But the problem isn't that his dad isn't letting him. The problem is that his dad isn't actually teaching him well how to do these things. And his dad isn't giving him space to try and then fail in a safe area. So, like, we have a scene where he's practicing his shooting the crossbow on the boat. And then he actually is better at shooting the crossbow after that in the book. He hits his marks, he hits his targets. So we do have this one example of his dad actually giving him instruction, but a lot of times his dad is kind of snapping at him, making these judgment calls that Simon isn't included on. So he often feels like, well, when did we decide that? Like he feels like he's always kind of catching up. And I think the issue is more because of his dad's inability to really communicate rather than the book saying, well, Simon was right all along.
You know what? I hate to say it, but I think this book needed a training montage. The only one that's ever needed one.
Maybe. Maybe, yeah. So Aldrich searches the caverns. He finds a dining area full of tokens, and he realizes that there was a meeting of dragons here. They were all coming to meet the Chinese dragon and plan their next move.
Yeah, I wanted him to be a little bit more sad about losing his son, but he's like, time to go. They also had this little bit of foreshadowing where some dude shows up and is like, the Chinese dragon's actually chill, but like, we all must bend to our overlords because doom is upon us. Doom, doom, doom. And then he literally is like, anyway, Simon's over there. They're meeting in London. It was like a weird scene.
Yeah. The black dragon feeds Simon on the ship. He talks to him. He's like, I would never take my son into battle like that. That's dangerous. He then falls asleep, and his pipe makes clouds of knights that are galloping over the horizon. And then he makes a boat with him and Simon on it, and they're having a good time on the little cloud boat. So Simon's like, you know what? Trust him. I think he's telling the truth. Aldrich flies back to his ship and then he makes it back to London, and it says he makes it back to London after the Beijing dragon, the black dragon does. Simon and the black dragon go to a gallery opening then. And here he sees Alethea and she's staring at this white color field painting and she's like, I'm under a spell. I was captured in Russia and I cannot break eye contact with this painting. And all around her, the paintings that are on display are her artwork, and she's like, this should be the proudest moment of my life, but I'm under a spell, which made me really sad. She has a solo show in London and she can't enjoy it. Anyway, it's a trap. Simon realizes. And then he realizes that they're absolutely surrounded by dragons. They're absolutely surrounded by dragons, including the white dragon. He's still alive. And then they all monologue to him about how it's a trap and he fell for it and he's stupid.
They're not wrong, once again.
Aldrich then ineffectively crashes through a bunch of windows on his horse and some kind of magical contraption that shoots crossbows, and then is immediately captured along with Simon and Alethea in a magical white prison that sinks into the floor.
Yeah, our third trap door, or trapped floor.
While they're down there, the dragons mingle. And we do get some cool descriptions of some of the different dragons. We see like how individual all of them are. There's like a tiger dragon and a fox dragon and an elephant dragon and a sandy dragon that has his children all around him. So he has children. Like, how did he have children?
Yeah, they introduced lady dragons for the first time. So they talk about not reproducing. And I'm like, is it because there are no women? And then they're like, here's two.
Or there are three. There's the fox dragon, the tiger dragon, and then there's the dragon that is from Spain who's like covered in whips all over her that are like moving around.
Really cool. Diversity win. Some of these evil monsters are ladies.
Yeah. So in the cage, Aldrich tells the others that he thinks they will try to summon the Serpent Queen, which we haven't mentioned at all, but is a thing in this book.
So they do mention the Serpent Queen like once or twice in the beginning in a way that I guess if you were paying attention, you could be like, that's foreshadowing, but it's just kind of like thrown around.
I think it is foreshadowed. It's just something
Yeah.
that we haven't mentioned in this podcast yet. And he said that like the reason that their magic clashes against itself right now is because the Serpent Queen was bound by a bunch of Egyptian priests thousands of years ago or something. And if she were to be summoned again, it would unite their magic, so then they would be extremely powerful. And right now, because all of these dragons are in one place, there are these huge storms just like destroying Europe.
Also, the world is ending. They do multiple descriptions of like blights that are happening upon cities across the world.
Yeah. So Alethea then reveals that she wrote all the dragon death spells down on a piece of paper from memory. And they're like, oh, sweet. Thanks. Thanks, Alethea.
Thank God they lost the MacGuffin immediately. And I was just like, they didn't write any of it down. And she's like, I got it in memory. It's like, cool.
Good thing she has a good memory.
She's so helpful, and they also do, like, a really good job, at least in the beginning, of, like, trying to make her, like, give her, like, some characterization and some quirkiness. I, like, wanted her to be more front and center in this book so bad.
The white dragon then comes down and he taunts them. He tells them he was able to track them because Aldrich and Alethea are in love and he could like smell their love, which is gross. And like, why and how? How are they in love? They like have not interacted and Aldrich has only been mean to Alethea.
Well, one thing I do like about this book is that even though it's, like, literally, like, running from plot point to plot point, they do have, like, some filler scenes in here where they can chill and do some characterization. They are literally the boat scenes, and there's a couple of scenes of Alethea, like, trying very hard to make some food that is edible and failing, and Aldrich, like, being like, "It's mean not to let her try." You know what? We should talk about how, like, Aldrich lets Alethea fail constantly with the breakfast food and not Simon, but that's a different thing. But anyway, so they, like, kind of do some interacting around that, but it's random.
I just think that he is so mean to her for like 90% of their interactions. But then, you know what? I'm saying this, but most romanticy, that's the dynamic. So maybe I should shut up. The white dragon also tells Simon that his dad doesn't love him. He tells Aldrich that Simon wishes his dad were the white dragon. He's like, he wished he was me and not you because, when he saw me, that he's really disappointed in who you are. And then he says that they're going to sacrifice Alethea to the Serpent Queen, and they take her up and strap her to a table. And then he also takes up Aldrich, who's like chained with magical white chains. And he's like, you're going to be burned alive, but not as a sacrifice. You'll be just burned alive for fun. Then Simon is left alone.
There is some stuff that is added that makes things more make sense in like retrospect. He does say that he told all of the dragons that the dragon have hunters essentially have WMDs but for dragons, and that's why after all of these years this is happening, because he like lied to all of the dragons and then convinced him that Aldrich has like the super secret weapon, and that's why they're all agreeing to raise the mama dragon.
Simon is left alone down in the dungeon, but the black dragon is there, and he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna open this door and you can leave. So Simon then leaves. The dragons all start chanting to summon the Serpent Queen. Aldrich is like, hey, like the white dragon tricked you and lied to you. Where's my weapon? Where's my WMD? Where is it? See, you can't find it because he lied. And he's gonna kill you all himself. And then all the dragons who already have this really, really tentative truce being there right now because they're all very, evil. They all start brawling.
Yeah, and then the floor turns invisible and the Serpent Queen starts to rise. So if everyone's wondering, that's the fourth floor that's gone that's like fallen down or been trapped or whatever. We did it. We made it to number 4.
Yeah, she's like slowly rising. Alethea touches Simon's armor, which then he's able to fly with, and he flies across the floor of all these brawling dragons. He cuts his hand, he wipes his blood on the arrow, he skewers the death spell into the shaft and then shoots it at the Serpent Queen, hits her, and he's like, yeah, I did it. And then she's like, okay, never mind. And she goes back down. And that's the end of the Serpent Queen's rise. That's it.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't mind. Everything like has the same pacing and gets the same amount of time. So even the big dragon queen, it's like, we gotta go. We're on to the next thing. We did it. Time to go.
There's a huge fight. Aldrich kills the white dragon and the Venetian dragon at the same time. Alethea is unable to protect them with a wall of stone, and they are just in that for the rest of the battle. And Simon even remarks, he's like, must be some fight. Can't see it.
See, you messaged me and you were like, you're going to be furious, because a thing that I specifically hate is when the camera doesn't show the fight for some reason. They like take the point of view character can't see what's happening. So they're like, oh, there's a really cool battle that's happening over there. And I feel like wasn't mad, A, because you like warned me, and then also because I really didn't think the author had it in him. I mostly get frustrated when like really talented authors are they're so good with everything else and then they like go to write an action and then they just like don't write an action scene. I was like, just give it a try. Just try to write an action scene. You're so good at everything else. I believe in you. I believe in you. But with this one, I was like, you know what? I probably wouldn't have been able to follow whatever you're writing anyway, so it's fine. We're under some bricks.
Once the fight ends, she leads them out of the rubble, thus fulfilling the prophecy that she dreamed or had a vision of. The Parisian dragon then attacks because he hates children. Then the black dragon shoots him with lightning and he explodes. And then it rains paint.
They talk so hard about the death spell earlier in it, and then they just like blow this guy up with lightning.
Well, it's the another dragon does it. So maybe I think the dragons can kill each other with their magic,
Sure.
which makes sense since their magic isn't compatible, like it clashes.
The only thing that can kill a dragon is another dragon. They should have had someone say that into the wind or whatever.
Well, remember that the living flame can kill a dragon, and that's collected from dead dragons. So it makes sense that he used his magic to kill a dragon.
All right, you're right, I'm wrong. I got a little caught up into the weeds of trying to figure out what this book was saying because the characters are a little thin and the settings are a little bit flimsy. And like, I was like trying to read this book through like what I understood of cliches and it got me lost, I have to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's okay. They settle in a castle in New England, and Aldrich gives Simon a horse and knights him. And Alethea tries to track down the black dragon. And that's how the book ends.
Yeah, I love that they literally settle right next to his school so he can be like, I'm cool now and I have a cool dad. It's a great end.
Yeah. That school and the castle in New England did not get destroyed when the world-ending events of the dragons meeting happened. That area was fine.
Yeah.
I like to think that it's just this little patch of green and then all around it is like destroy destroyed. All right. So do you want to talk about the dragons?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I feel like I was pretty mean on this book because a thing that frustrates me specifically with books, and I think the thing that I'm hardest on is books are such a different medium than film and television or even graphic novels because you do have to like move people in and out of scenes and tell them people where they are. So that's just like a thing that I like focus on when I'm reading and if I don't know where people are or it doesn't, I feel like I don't know what's going on because the descriptions aren't there. It gets me a little bit confused. And then also, I just thought there was so much interesting like characterization that could have led to some like really emotional scenes. And no one really got too emotional in this book at all. Even like when Aldrich thinks that he's lost his son, he's like sad, but then he like soldiers on, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, he's like, gotta go.
I bring that all up to say I really enjoyed reading the dragons of this book. I thought they were really fun. And I do think that if you're like us and you're going on like a dragon tour of literature, I think you could read this book. This book is so readable too.
Yeah.
I might be a little bit hard on it, but it was such a better read than Fourth Wing because you could just go through it like quick, 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 quick. They're always on to the next thing. They're not like, no, I can't do it. I can't. Possibly I'm a girl, whatever.
Arguably, Simon accepts the call to adventure a little too easily. He's just like, I guess I'm on a boat now with my dad.
Yeah, he's like, I got this. And then the book is like, no, you don't. But anyway, the dragons are great. And I think it's really interesting because, like, we've had dragons and we've had people, and then we've had dragons that actually people and have dragon people intelligence. But these are like people. They're not quite dragonborn from D&D, but they are definitely the closest we've gotten to them.
Yeah, just to recap what the dragons look like. They exist in the world today and are every bit as evil as they ever were. It is only their appearance that has changed. Their 8-foot bodies now resemble men much more than before. With their reptilian faces hidden beneath a cloak or a hood, you wouldn't look twice at one crossing the street hunched over, perhaps pretending to be a homeless man pushing a grocery cart, but make no mistake, these dragon men are highly dangerous. They still have scales for skin, slithery tongues, lizard tails, sharpened faces, and they are secretly responsible for most of the worst fires you hear about, using their wicked magic for no reason, burning buildings just for sport. I like that they were saying dragons are capitalists. I thought that was really funny. Dragons are capitalists and fascists.
They were like, dragons are pure evil. And then they're like, except for that one.
Yeah, I would argue that perhaps he's making a statement regarding the way that cultures look at dragons. So, the dragon in the St. George myth and European dragons are more generally seen as symbols of evil, whereas dragons in Asia are seen as symbols of wisdom and goodness. So maybe there's like something there with the fact that that dragon actually did have a conscience, even though like what his magic was doing to people was fucked up.
Yeah, he's like, I can't leave, otherwise I would, I promise. I mean, the horde as a capitalist idea and like an anti-capitalist stance is like really interesting, and I really dig it. The fact that like all of the dragons ate their hordes, so they were like a part of them, and they were like kind of a rotten part that sat in their stomach was like also really cool. I feel like one of the tropes I love about dragons is the horde, and you'd think that like every book would just like, and then this dragon sits on a pile of money, but like a lot of authors really put their own stamp on it, and it's really cool.
I think that is something that is surprising about a lot of these books we've read, how different the hordes look and how the dragons interact with them is very different. Even if they are actually a pile of gold, then that interaction is still very unique to the book. I really, again, I do think that this was like making a joke about the conspiracy theory of lizard people, which makes sense with the anti-capitalist stance. And then this kind of individual look at these dragons. So each one has its own kind of magic, its own vices, its own hoard of things that it collects, and a very, very different physical appearance. So the Russian dragon looks kind of wolfish, he's covered in fur. The Parisian dragon is really, really skinny, kind of spidery. The black dragon also has fur. It says his arms are furry, and he has like a long braid. So they all have these very individualized appearances. There's the, the fox dragon and the tiger dragon that they reference too. And the way that they act has so much characterization, is so lovely and fun with how evil they are and how like they kind of are willing to kind of bask in their evilness, and how they don't trust each other but have to work together but are really, really petty, mean to each other too. And I said that they really reminded me of the Skeksis in Dark Crystal, where they will work together, but they are pure evil. So they also all hate and distrust each other and are like constantly fighting with each other and threatening each other. And they also do have a very puppety feel. So I think that kind of went along with it. Like I was imagining these as like Dark Crystal-esque, like Jim Henson-y puppets the whole time, which made my reading experience fun because I love that kind of puppetry. So I had a great time with that.
So to me, because I just come from a different reference, they reminded me a lot of like Power Ranger villains or like Sailor Moon villains, especially because they got like introduced like one after another,
Mm.
kind of more like Monster of the Week things. I don't know. You don't know Sailor Moon, so you won't get the reference.
I also never watched Power Rangers either. So neither of those are things that I am familiar with.
Each one has like a theme of the week, and like their power and magic is like based off of their themes. And like obviously Sailor Moon, they're animated, but with Power Rangers, it is people in suits or it is like, like models and stuff. So I think we both picked up on the cartoony puppetiness of it. That was really cool.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that. I think more things should have puppet-like things in it.
Jo just watched Project Hail Mary, and she wasn't sure if she was gonna like it or if she should watch it. And I'm like, there's a really good puppet in it. And what did you say to me?
I've just been texting JoJo nonstop about it.
The first thing you sent me was I would die for that puppet, which is the right response and also such a you thing.
I said I would die for the puppet, which I would. And then since I've seen it, I've been getting all of this like promotional stuff about it. And I think I also said to you, Ryan Gosling is in this movie. And usually when Ryan Gosling is the lead in a movie, the way they market it is look at this handsome man, look at his face. Don't you want to look at his face more? But for this movie, they're marketing it like, look at this puppet. Look how cute this puppet is. Look how we made the puppet move. And then Ryan Gosling being like, yeah, this is how I interacted with the puppet.
I do have to say, I think that's a little bit the algorithm because a lot of the stuff that I've been seeing is like the buttons on the spaceship actually press and you can flick the knobs. It's great,
I've been seeing that too. The scene where like he's floating in the red like dots.
Mm.
They created that color through a lighting rig and not through CGI.
Yeah, the whole thing's dope.
That's a good movie. You should go see it if you haven't yet. I loved it. It was great.
And it highlights the importance of real world geometry and geography and understanding a story.
And also a great puppet.
Yeah.
Which again, I think this book has some very puppet-like dragons in it. I always like a puppet-like dragon. So that was a plus for me.
I also liked that the dragon dragons leak magic,
Yeah.
perverse the area around it, so they're just, like, easy to find, and, like, the only reason they're able to do it is because literally nobody can see that they're dragons.
I love when anything leaks magic.
Yeah,
I love a leaking magic system. I think that's great.
yeah. I also like just how weird and gross they are.
Oh, yeah, they're super gross, but in a fun way.
Yeah, like beetles and, like, worm.
Yeah, like, they talk about when they're in the Venetians' lair, they talk about how all the jewels are, like, stuck to the walls with, like, this goo. So it's not even just like, "Oh, he has a pile of jewels." It's like, he's doing something gross to get this to look like this.
Or like the white dragons, they spent like a whole paragraph being like, this was white, that was white, everything's white.
The white dragon was indeed purely white. Its leathery skin was white with the tiny cream speckles. It had small white plates on its back that stuck up in the air like plates of a miniature stegosaurus. Its long fingers were tipped with white claws. Its teeth were white. Its amber white eyes had a protective, translucent white eyelid. Even when it closed its eyes, it saw whiteness. It lived in a luxury building in New York City that overlooked Central Park. Everything in its very large apartment was white. The floors, the walls, the ceilings, the drapes, the furniture, including the chairs, the tables, the sofa, the bookcases, and the books in them, as well as the telephone, the television, all of the furnishings everywhere, all were shades of white. The kitchen and all of its tools were white. The bedroom and the bed and the nightstands were white. So was the bathroom. Nothing was ever written down in the home of the white dragon. The white dragon liked blank white paper. Nothing was ever dirty. The white dragon made sure anything dirty was thrown out unless it could be made clean and white. Nothing was ever eaten that was not white. The white dragon ate white cream soup or white clam chowder, stone white crackers, white bread, white vanilla ice cream, white mashed potatoes, and white meat. His favorite, white goats, swallowed whole. The dragon was eating a human being. He used his magic to grind it up until the person was a white powder that could be sprinkled easily over nice white food. It made great pride in its appearance. It spent most of its time in a massive white bathtub filled with white bubbles. The one reason it enjoyed going into the world was to return home and wash away everything with white soap. Yeah, so I think, again, we have themes of the art world, which I think I explained enough. We have themes of anti capitalism in this book. The only other thing I want to say is I know you had trouble with Simon's character. I actually liked his character a lot. I thought he was really funny. He was like pretty snarky. He almost felt like when Aldrich did something ridiculous or when he did something and he's like, this isn't going to work out. He was kind of like he was like looking over his shoulder at you reading the book and was like, what's going on? Or like, I can't do this, or, something like that. So it felt a little bit like the author was nodding or winking to us a little bit through his characterization. And I actually appreciated that. I thought that was really funny and enjoyable.
I don't know. I think I just got frustrated by this book and I a little bit took it out on Simon. I think I just have trouble with characters that just can't stop failing in the book and insisting that everything's fine. If it was like funnier, I think I would do it, but I don't know.
I think that Simon is better than Violet, though, because Violet never gets any better ever until she absolutely needs to do the thing. Violet from Fourth Wing. But Simon does get marginally better throughout the book. Like, his aim with a crossbow gets better.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to then kind of control the flight of his suit of armor a little bit better. It's just he hasn't had enough training to really do anything actually well. And that's kind of his dad's fault. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I do like how his dad is kind of like, I have no idea how to be a father and I'm bad at it. And I think I would have liked the book more if it had actually had an interesting investigation of that. And like, how can these two people who have been apart for a long time because of the father's decision kind of come together and learn how to live together again and be a family. And the book doesn't really do that.
Yeah, I think I'm the last thing I'm gonna say about this is just I thought this was like an easy read and it was like a good read. I just think that my enjoyment of it got caught up in like some of the weird characterization and like struggling to figure out where people were in scenes or whatever. And that just it made it hard for me to like appreciate and see things later because I'm already kind of having my back up. Sometimes you don't like a book and it kind of clouds your view of the book or you get bogged down or one or two minor details and that like really kind of drags down the whole experience for you. But otherwise, I think this book had really, really good bones. I just don't think it had much else.
I know I say this a lot on the podcast, but I, again, feel like if this had gone through another few rounds of editing, it would have been a really great book. I am always a fan of more editing, I think is what I can take away from this podcast as a whole. So all of that being said, I don't know that we would necessarily recommend this book. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, probably. I cracked open, and we're going to talk about this book in 2 seconds, the next book we're reading, and it was like a breath of fresh air because it was so well written and it started with a beautiful description of a scene. And I was just like, there are other books that I would read before this, 100%. I did not have a bad time reading it. I'm not upset that I read it. I want to thank our friend and YouTube commenter for recommending this book because I think it's a really interesting addition to the work that we're doing and it's fun. But I think there are other books. If you're looking for a dragon book, you could do worse than this book. And trust me, we have.
Oh, yeah, we have. The only times I was ever angry with this book was with, the racist depictions and the racist wording surrounding characters. Other than that, I felt pretty neutral the entire time. Like, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. Again, yeah, thank you to I am Grimakin. Again, don't know if I pronounced that right, for suggesting this. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate all your comments. And I hope that you're not too upset that we did have some complaints about this book, but we do really appreciate that you suggested it to us. And we do think that it was really helpful in filling out our view of the canon.
And we're excited to hear what you all have to say in response to what we have to say.
Yeah.
This isn't an essay. It's not like this is the law of how this book works. It's a conversation that we're having.
Yeah, and it's just our opinions. And, you liking this book is totally fine, and we don't think that you're wrong or that you're bad for it. We really appreciate the fact that you like this book. Again, like Tooth and Claw, I hated. I hated that book so much, and I would never recommend that book to anybody. But this, maybe, depending on the person and what their interests are.
Especially if they're a little boy. This seems like a book for
Yeah.
little boys, a thing that we are not.
Yeah, we were not the audience for this book, and we did know that going in. So, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, so this has been The Saint of Dragons by Jason Hightman. So what are we reading next? I kind of like hinted at it, but you should just say it.
So we are actually returning to Mercedes Lackey, and we are reading the third book in the Joust series, which is titled Sanctuary.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this, mostly because I did start reading it. I'm like 5 pages in, and I was like, I missed you. I missed your good descriptions of things. I missed your interesting wordplay. I missed your depictions of male and female relationships. I missed Vetch/Kieran, who's such a cute boy. I missed all of the dragons and all of the guys. It's just like, not only is it very well written and has such like beautiful dialogue and everything, it's like also like a really interesting story.
Yeah, I think this is our favorite book series that we've read for the podcast. Is it the only series that we've read? I think it's the only book that we've read the sequel to. So now we're hoping to read the third one. But yeah, so we're going to read Sanctuary next. So that's all that we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Again, thank you for suggesting this book. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and hit the subscribe or follow button.
Yeah, and we've just talked a lot about our thoughts, but like I said, this is a conversation. I mean, as much as one can have with a podcast. But what are your thoughts on The Saint of Dragons? Would you recommend this book to others? Let us know in the comments, or just tell us what other dragon books you would like to read. We are always adding to our lists.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.